let's start working on Rigadoon. It's very important to prepare the first note. First note comes down bow. You have to make sure that your left hand is ready. If you have tapes, that's okay, to check your pinky position with the tape. Right after that, make sure that you put your bow on the string, at least for the brief moment. And you check your bow hold, and also think about where your bow will go. Try to avoid mistake preparing a bow like this. If your bow is in somewhat diagonal position, that will go to the wrong direction. You see, my bow was sliding up and down and the sound quality wasn't good. Your wrist, right hand wrist has to be in a good round shape. Your elbow should be fairly low. Try to avoid position like that. And after you check it, you are ready to play. Your first bow stroke is down bow. That means your bow will go from the frog to the tip. In the second measure, you have to count dotted half note. Dotted half note has 3 quarter notes in it, 3 counts. And if you have metronome, you have to hear 3 clicks. Let me turn it on so it will be much easier for you to follow. You see, you have to pay the extra attention when you play the quarter note at the end of the second measure. It has to be right with the fourth beat. Seems to be easy task, but always more difficult with the metronome or with accompaniment. Then let's pay attention to the rhythm in the fourth measure. Yes, 2 half notes. Each of them have 2 beats, 2 quarter notes. And again, it's very important to pay attention how precisely you play. Why don't you play together, measure 3 and 4, and I'll have metronome running at 60. Now you're much more comfortable with counting. Let's now put it together and play first 2 lines. Do you remember how to make a retake? Well, here at the end of the measure 8, that's exactly what we'll have to do. Why? Because we have very long note, dotted half note, 3 beats, and right after that, at the beginning of the next measure, measure 9, we have to start down bow, and we need to get close to the frog. You will use the whole bow for dotted half note, and then at the end of the measure, once you're done with the dotted half note, 3 beats, right? Then you will have to lift the bow and move it to the frog. Make sure you don't lift it too much. If you do it like this, it might feel very exciting thing to do, but you might not have enough time to do that. Ideally, you'll just have to lift it a little bit and make sure that you have enough time to move to the frog. Also, you'll have to have tiny moment to set the bow. If you do it at very last moment, you might just drop the bow on the string and it might even bounce off, creating unwanted noise. To avoid that, make sure that you make a retake right after you're done with the dotted half note. And try to make it fairly quickly so you'll have time to set the bow. Why don't we practice together? We'll just play the measure 8 and the very beginning of measure 9. One more time. Getting better? One more time yet. If it feels a bit challenging, you can actually spend less bow playing dotted half note. Say, if you spend just half of the bow, your dotted half note might sound a bit softer, but then it will be easier for you to move to the frog. It will work this way. The advantage here is that it's easier to make. A little bit of disadvantage is that you will not be able to make as much sound as you will using more bow. At the beginning of the measure 9, we have a different challenge, 2 eighth notes followed by the quarter note. Most of my students at first make a mistake making those eighth notes too slow. You have to remember that you have to squeeze them in just one quarter note. In other words, you can actually subdivide. When you listen to the metronome, instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, you need to subdivide 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And each subdivision will give you a good idea how fast you have to play the eighth notes. Why don't we subdivide it together? You can say it with me. And of course, when you will be playing, you don't have to say anything, but you will have to think exactly the same way. Here we are. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Isn't it fun to do it? It's very enjoyable, and that will make a difference. If you learn how to subdivide and do it well, you will have no problem counting and playing with other people. Now let's play from measure 9 to 16 together. At the end of measure 12 and 16, you will again have to make a retake. But you remember how we did that. I'm sure you will have no problem whatsoever to do it again. How are you doing with rhythm in measures 9 and 13? I think it would be very good exercise for us to play it together. Let's do it. Measure 9, we'll play it 4 times in a row. And after you do that, perhaps you could play it even more. Then you will have no problem counting measures like this. Working on the rhythm, you will also pay attention to bowings. Each group starts in opposite direction. The beginning of the measure is down bow, but the second group of 2 eighth notes and a quarter note right in the middle of the measure comes up bow. And that sometimes make it more difficult to figure out. Playing like this, in slower tempo, maybe even without metronome, will help you to get used to that. Bowing direction control is very important. In the measures 17 and 21, we have similar rhythm, but there is a little bit of variation. Instead of repeating two eighth notes in a quarter note, in second part of the measure we have long half note. And this is another dangerous spot. Many students just run through that half note without counting through that. Let's do it together with metronome to make it very clear. Did you get used to repeating the same pattern as in measure 9? Well, of course, here's a different story. Make sure that you play what you see and subdivide in your mind. Time to play from measure 17 to 24. Join me if you can, or perhaps it would be a very good idea to listen through it first time and then play with me again. Every measure in this piece starts down bow, except for one. Have you noticed which one I'm talking about? Yes, that's measure 19. The up bow at the beginning of the measure is clearly marked, but of course make sure that you pay attention to that. If you play using correct bowings, if every note here, unless you have to make a retake, comes down, up, then you will never make a mistake, and measure 19 will always come up bow. And the last part of Rigadoon goes exactly the same as first 8 measures. Let's enjoy it, because now, after we learn the first 8 measures, it will be much easier for you to play the ending of this happy piece. I didn't slow down to avoid making you confused, but it's very common to slow down at the end of the piece, even if it's not marked in a score. That will be your artistic decision. You are an artist, you play cello, and it's time to think as an artist. We'll be making small steps, but again, that's important to understand that sometimes you can add your personal touch to music. But of course, you have to make sure that you do absolutely everything you can to be true to the text. And everything sounds just right. And after that, you can allow yourself a bit of artistic freedom. I'm sure you will be confident playing correct notes with correct rhythm quite soon. Let's make sure that after that happens, you will switch your attention to the way you play, to your technique. And it's very important to double check your left hand position, making sure that your fingers are round, that your thumb is touching the neck of the cello. It's never in the air like this. The thumb provides very important reference point for us. It's also important to make sure that your bow hold is good. You can always start with 90 degrees approach. That means that your fingers have to have 90 degrees angle between them and the stick of the bow. And your wrist has to be relaxed. Your thumb shouldn't get stuck here. If your fingers go around the stick, that's not good. The main reason, because if you do that, then your wrist will look like this, and you will never be able to play with relaxed motion. To make sure that your wrist in the proper position, your thumb should be touching this part of the frog, right here. It's really hard to twist my hand to show it to you, and I hope you can see that I'm trying to keep my thumb here, not sticking it through the frog. And again, good way to check on that, if you hold bow properly, your wrist will be in that position. And if your thumb is too far, then your wrist will collapse and will look more or less like this. And after you checked all of that, it is a very good idea to play with piano accompaniment. This is why in the next part you will get piano accompaniment in slower tempo and in a faster tempo, as marked.